When my son told me he was evicting me from my own home, I collapsed into my husband's favorite armchair, gasping for breath. Days later, I was standing in a courtroom, watching my child's face turn ashen as my lawyer revealed the secret weapon hidden in my husband's will. That's when I realized family ties are like contracts, only valuable when both parties honor them. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because this story is about to get more twisted than a roller coaster built by a vengeful architect. I never thought I'd be fighting my own flesh and blood for the roof over my head. Not after 63 years of life, 42 years of marriage, and a lifetime of sacrificing everything for my children. My Harold passed away 3 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. It was quick and brutal, leaving me shell-shocked and barely functioning. Harold had always handled our finances, the bills, the mortgage, the investments. I knew we were comfortable, but the details were fuzzy. "Don't worry your pretty head about it, Elaine," he'd always say with that smile I fell in love with back in '77. The funeral was beautiful, I suppose. I remember very little of it. Just a parade of sympathetic faces and casseroles filling my refrigerator. My daughter Rebecca flew in from Seattle with her husband and kids. My youngest, Tommy, drove up from his college town. And then there was Martin, my oldest, who lived just 20 minutes away, but somehow couldn't find time to visit his father during those final weeks. Martin was there for the funeral though, arm around my shoulders, telling everyone how he'd take care of me now. "Mom won't have to worry about a thing," he announced to our pastor, loud enough for half the mourners to hear. I should have recognized the warning signs right then. The first few weeks after burying Harold, I was lost in grief. Martin started coming by regularly, bringing groceries, checking the mail, sitting with me at the kitchen table with paperwork spread out between us. "Just some things Dad left unfinished," he'd explain, sliding papers toward me. "Just sign here, Mom. I'll take care of everything. Script part separator ===." I signed without reading. That mistake will haunt me until my dying day. A month after Harold's funeral, Martin's visits became less frequent. When he did come by, he seemed distracted, checking his watch, taking calls in the hallway. Once, I overheard him talking about renovations and property values. "Martin," I asked one afternoon, "is everything all right with the house payments?" Harold always handled those things. He patted my hand like I was a confused child. "Don't worry about any of that, Mom. Dad made sure you'd be taken care of." I believed him. After all, this was my son, the boy who'd cried when he skinned his knees, who'd begged me to check under his bed for monsters, who'd danced with me at his wedding while thanking me for teaching him how to be a good man. Then came that Wednesday morning. The doorbell rang at 9:17 a.m. I remember checking the clock, wondering who would visit so early. A stern-faced woman in a pantsuit stood on my porch, an envelope in her manicured hand. "Mrs. Elaine Foster?" She didn't wait for my answer. "This is an official notice of eviction. You have 10 days to vacate the premises." The world tilted sideways. "There must be some mistake," I stammered. "This is my home." Her expression didn't change. "According to county records, this property now belongs to Martin Foster. He's exercising his right as the owner to terminate your occupancy." She handed me the envelope and walked away, leaving me clutching that horrible paper, my fingers trembling so badly I could barely read the words that confirmed my worst nightmare. My son had stolen my home, the home where I'd raised him, the home where his father had taken his last breath. I called Martin immediately. The call went to voicemail. I tried again, and again. Finally, I texted, "There's someone here saying I'm being evicted. Please call me." His response came 3 hours later. "Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you. It's time you moved somewhere more manageable. I've found a nice senior apartment complex. Script part separator ===. Senior apartment complex?" I stared at my phone in disbelief, my fingers trembling as I typed back, "This is our family home. Harold and I paid off the mortgage 15 years ago." Martin's response was immediate this time. "Actually, Mom, you signed the deed over to me last month. Remember the paperwork? It's all legal." The room began to spin. Those papers I'd signed without reading, trusting my son while grief clouded my judgment. I sank onto the sofa, our wedding photos staring at me from the mantel. Harold would know what to do. Harold would fix this. But Harold was gone, and I was alone. I spent that night pacing the halls of my home, touching the wallpaper Harold and I had chosen together, the doorframe where we'd marked the children's heights, the banister he'd replaced himself 20 summers ago. By morning, I was no longer just heartbroken. I was angry. I called Rebecca in Seattle, choking back tears as I explained what her brother had done. "That absolute bastard," she hissed. "Mom, don't you dare pack a single box. I'm calling Mitchell." Mitchell Jenkins had been Harold's best friend since college and our family attorney for decades. Though semi-retired now, he still kept his hand in a few cases, mostly for old friends. 2 days later, Mitchell's silver Lexus pulled into my driveway. I watched from the window as he eased his lanky frame from the driver's seat, his signature bow tie slightly askew, as always. "Elaine," he said when I opened the door, his kind eyes crinkling with concern. Rebecca filled me in.
"I need to see those papers you signed."
I led him to the dining room where I'd gathered every document I could find related to the house. Mitchell settled into a chair, reading glasses perched on his nose, methodically examining each page. "Your son's been busy," he finally said, his tone grim. "Not just the house, Elaine. According to these, you've signed over power of attorney, your bank accounts, Harold's life insurance payout, everything." The floor seemed to drop away beneath me.
"Can he do that?
Can he really take everything?" Mitchell removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. "He already has. But there's something interesting here." He tapped a clause in one of the documents. "The transfer of assets hinges on one condition, that you are deemed mentally incapable of managing your own affairs." I gasped. "He's going to try to declare me incompetent?" "It appears," Mitchell said carefully, "that was the plan all along. Script part separator equals. That night, I couldn't sleep. The walls of my bedroom seemed to press in on me, each creak of the old house a reminder that soon, this might not be my home anymore. I kept imagining Martin with a team of doctors, all of them nodding gravely as they discussed my condition. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound ever could. By morning, I had moved from shock to fury. I called Mitchell at 7 a.m. sharp. "I want to fight this," I told him before he could even say hello. "Whatever it takes." "I was hoping you'd say that," Mitchell replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I've already filed an emergency injunction to halt the eviction. But Elaine, you need to understand. This will get ugly. Uglier than my son trying to declare me insane and steal everything his father and I built?" I asked. Mitchell chuckled. "Fair point. Meet me at my office at noon."
"And Elaine?"
"Bring any financial records you can find. Tax returns, bank statements, investment portfolios, anything Harold might have kept." I spent the morning tearing through Harold's home office, discovering a metal lockbox hidden behind his collection of first edition mysteries. Inside was a USB drive, several files of paperwork, and a handwritten letter addressed to me with "open only if necessary" scrawled across the envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Harold's familiar handwriting filled the page. "My dearest Elaine, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and something has gone terribly wrong. I've suspected for some time that Martin has been making poor financial decisions. Last year, he approached me for a substantial loan to cover gambling debts." The letter continued, detailing Martin's spiral into addiction and desperation. Harold had been protecting me from the truth, but he'd also been protecting our assets, creating hidden accounts and backup plans. I clutched the letter to my chest, torn between gratitude for Harold's foresight and fresh grief that he'd carried this burden alone. Script part separator equals. At Mitchell's office, I spread Harold's documents across his mahogany desk. The attorney's eyebrows rose higher with each page he examined. "Elaine," he said finally, "this is extraordinary evidence. Harold knew Martin might try something like this. How could my own son do this?" My voice cracked. Where did I go wrong with him? Mitchell reached across the desk to squeeze my hand. "This isn't your failure. Martin made his choices. Now, we have work to do before he realizes what we've discovered. The next morning, I was making tea when a key turned in my front door. Martin walked in as if he owned the place, which, legally, he now did. "Mom," he said, eyeing my robe and slippers. "I see you haven't started packing." "I'm not going anywhere," I replied, my heart hammering but my voice steady. He sighed dramatically. "Don't make this difficult. The movers are coming Monday." "Does Rebecca know what you've done?" I asked. A flicker of unease crossed his face. "Rebecca needs to mind her own business." "And what about your father? Did you think about him when you decided to throw me out of our home?" Martin's expression hardened. "Dad always coddled you. He never told you about our financial problems because he didn't think you could handle it. Is that what you tell yourself?" I pulled Harold's letter from my pocket. "Your father knew exactly what you were doing. The gambling, the loans, all of it." The color drained from Martin's face.
What are you talking about?
I smiled thinly. "You forgot one thing about your father, Martin. He was always 3 steps ahead. And you forgot something about me too." "What's that?" he asked, his confidence visibly faltering. "I've got the best lawyer in town. Mitchell filed an emergency injunction yesterday. You can't evict me. And this morning, he's presenting evidence of fraud to the district attorney." Martin's phone rang. He checked it, then looked back at me with panic in his eyes. "What have you done?" "I didn't do anything, son," I said, sipping my tea calmly. "You did this to yourself. Script part separator . Martin stalked out of the house, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the family photos on the wall. Through the window, I watched him pacing on the lawn, gesturing wildly as he argued with someone on his phone. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was hollowed out, like someone had scooped away everything inside me, leaving just a thin shell of the woman I used to be. That afternoon, Mitchell called with news. The DA was reviewing our evidence, but Martin had already assembled his own legal team. They were countering with claims that I was showing signs of dementia. "They're requesting a psychological evaluation," Mitchell said gravely. "Their petition mentions you forgetting appointments, misplacing items, showing paranoid tendencies." "That's ridiculous. I'm perfectly sound of mind." I protested. "I know that, Elaine. But they're building a narrative. Have you had any witnesses to your interactions with Martin lately? Anyone who can testify to your mental clarity?" I thought about it. "My neighbor Judith saw him here this morning. And my bridge club meets every Thursday."
"Good.
"We'll need statements from all of them." After we hung up, my doorbell rang. It was Detective Sarah Lombard from the Financial Crimes Unit, a compact woman with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense manner. "Mrs. Foster? I'd like to ask you some questions about your son, Martin Foster." I invited her in, offering coffee, which she declined. She opened a notebook and began a methodical interview about Martin's access to my finances, the papers I had signed, and Harold's records. "Your husband was quite thorough," she remarked, examining copies of the documents Mitchell had provided. "It appears he suspected your son's activities for some time." "Harold always said trust but verify," I replied, the phrase bringing a sad smile to my face. "I just never thought I'd need to verify my own child's honesty." Script part separator . Detective Lombard's visit lasted over 2 hours. By the time she left, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the living room where Harold and I had spent countless evenings together. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Just landed. Heading straight to you. Don't let Martin in again." I was about to reply when another text came through. This one from Martin. "Mom, you're making a huge mistake. Call off the dogs, or this gets really public really fast." I didn't respond. Whatever threat he was making, I'd face it head on. The next morning, the local newspaper ran a small story about a family dispute over the estate of Harold Foster, prominent local businessman. By afternoon, 2 local TV stations had picked up the story, and my phone was ringing with calls from reporters seeking comment. "Don't talk to any of them," Mitchell advised when I called him in a panic. "They'll twist your words." But Martin had no such reservations. By evening, he was on the 6 o'clock news, looking appropriately concerned as he explained how his aging mother was suffering from cognitive decline after his father's death. All I want is what's best for her, he told the sympathetic reporter. A smaller place, professional care, the things Dad would have wanted for her. I threw a couch pillow at the television, my hands shaking with rage. Rebecca arrived an hour later, rushing through the door and enveloping me in a fierce hug. That lying snake, she hissed, dropping her suitcase in the hall. I saw his interview at the airport. He's trying to make me look incompetent, I said, leading her to the kitchen where I'd laid out Harold's documents. But your father left evidence. Rebecca scanned the papers, her expression darkening. Mom, did you know Martin took out a second mortgage on this house 6 months ago? Dad's signature is on it, but I peered at the document. The signature did look like Harold's, but something was off. Harold was in the hospital 6 months ago. He couldn't have signed this. Rebecca met my eyes. Exactly. This is forgery. And it changes everything. Script part separator . We called Mitchell immediately. When he arrived 30 minutes later, his bow tie was crooked and his normally neat silver hair disheveled, as if he'd rushed out without his usual meticulous grooming. This, he said, examining the forged mortgage document under his desk lamp, is a game changer. Rebecca paced the kitchen. Can we have him arrested now? Forgery has to be a felony, right? Mitchell nodded slowly. It is. But we need to be strategic. Martin's team will claim Harold authorized this while ill, that perhaps his hand was shaky, which explains the discrepancy. But hospital records will show he was heavily medicated, I countered. He couldn't even hold a spoon, let alone sign legal documents. Precisely why I'm calling Judge Winters first thing tomorrow, Mitchell replied, carefully placing the document in his briefcase. We need to freeze all assets immediately before Martin liquidates anything else. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through my home of 40 years, touching the walls, the furniture, remembering. In our bedroom, I opened Harold's side of the closet, burying my face in his sweaters that still held his scent. How had things fallen apart so quickly? My phone buzzed with a text at 2:17 a.m. It was Martin. Last chance, Mom. Drop this witch hunt or everyone learns about Dad's secret. I stared at the message, my blood turning cold. What secret? Harold and I had shared everything, hadn't we? The next morning, bleary-eyed from lack of sleep, I showed the text to Rebecca and Mitchell. It's a bluff, Rebecca insisted. He's desperate. Mitchell wasn't so sure. Martin wouldn't make threats without ammunition. Is there anything Harold might have kept from you, Elaine? Anything at all? Script part separator . I thought hard, my mind racing through decades of marriage. Nothing came to mind until a memory surfaced from 15 years ago. Harold had gone on a business trip to Chicago that had been extended unexpectedly. When he returned, he seemed different, distracted, almost guilty. For weeks afterward, he received mysterious phone calls that he'd taken his study, door closed. Could there be something to Martin's threat? Had Harold kept secrets from me after all? I need to see what's on that USB drive, I said suddenly. Mitchell plugged it into his laptop, and we all leaned in to see what would appear. Financial records, mostly spreadsheets, tax documents, investment accounts. And then we found the folder labeled Chicago. Inside were photographs of a modest house in a suburban neighborhood. Property records. And most shocking of all, copies of checks made out to Vivian Reese dating back 20 years. Who is Vivian Reese? Rebecca whispered, though we were alone in the kitchen. I felt as if I'd been struck. The name was vaguely familiar. Hadn't Harold mentioned a colleague by that name once? Mitchell clicked on a document titled Agreement. As he skimmed it, his expression grew grave. Elaine, this appears to be a support arrangement. My heart hammered against my ribs. Support? Like child support? Mitchell adjusted his glasses. Not exactly. It seems Harold was providing financial assistance to this woman, but the agreement specifically states it's not for a child or related to any romantic involvement. Then what was it for? Rebecca demanded. It doesn't specify. Just that payments would continue until, Mitchell squinted at the screen, until obligations are fulfilled. I slumped in my chair. This must be what Martin was threatening to expose. But what was Harold's connection to this woman? And how had Martin discovered it when I never had? Script part separator equals. Rebecca gripped my hand. Mom, this doesn't mean anything bad. Dad could have been helping an old friend, a distant relative. But the doubt had already taken root. What else hadn't Harold told me? And how would it look if Martin made this public? The grieving widow fighting for her inheritance while her husband's secret financial arrangements came to light. Mitchell closed the laptop. Whatever this is, we'll deal with it. But first, we need to address the immediate threat, the psychiatric evaluation Martin's team is pushing for. The evaluation was scheduled for the following morning. Dr. Eleanor Walsh, a court-appointed psychiatrist, arrived at precisely 9 a.m. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes behind fashionable glasses. She explained the process clearly. Mrs. Foster, I'll be asking you some questions and giving you a few cognitive tests. This isn't about trapping you, just establishing your current mental capacity. For 2 hours, she had me identify objects, recall lists of words, solve simple problems, and discuss current events. I answered everything calmly and clearly, though inside I was trembling with anxiety. When she finished, she packed away her materials. I'll be submitting my report to the court tomorrow, she said, then hesitated. Off the record, Mrs. Foster, you have nothing to worry about. You're as sharp as they come. Relief flooded through me. But my respite was short-lived. That afternoon, Martin showed up at my door with a young woman I'd never seen before. Mom, he said, pushing past me into the foyer. I'd like you to meet someone. This is Vivian's daughter, Catherine. The young woman, dark-haired, early 30s, gave me an uncomfortable smile. Mrs. Foster, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. I stared at her, my mind racing. Was this Harold's? No, it couldn't be. She was too old to be a secret child. Martin's smile was razor-sharp. Catherine has quite a story to tell the judge about Dad's promises to her mother. Don't you, Kathy? Script part separator equals. The young woman shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. Mrs. Foster, I don't want to be involved in this. She's being modest, Martin interjected. Catherine's mother was Dad's first love, before you. He abandoned Vivian when she needed him most, and he spent the rest of his life trying to make amends. Secretly, of course. My mouth went dry. Is this true? I asked Catherine directly. She hesitated. My mother and Harold were close once. But Dad promised to take care of them both, Martin finished for her. He felt responsible. In fact, he promised the house would go to Catherine after you were gone. It's all in writing. That's not exactly, Catherine started, but Martin cut her off. Mom, drop this lawsuit now, or Catherine tells her story to every news outlet in state. Imagine the headlines. Widow fights husband's first love for family home. How will that look to your bridge club? I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just about the money anymore. Martin was threatening to destroy Harold's memory, to taint everything we'd built together. Rebecca appeared from the kitchen, having heard everything. Get out, she told Martin, her voice ice cold. And take your hired actress with you. She's not, Catherine began. Save it, Rebecca snapped. Whatever he's paying you, it's not worth committing perjury. Martin's face darkened. This isn't over. You have until tomorrow to withdraw the lawsuit. He grabbed Catherine's arm, pulling her toward the door. As they left, I caught Catherine looking back at me with what seemed like guilt. He's bluffing, Rebecca insisted after they'd gone. That woman probably isn't even Vivian's daughter. But I wasn't so sure. There had been something in Catherine's eyes, something that made me wonder if there was some truth buried in Martin's threats. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Catherine's face, the reluctance in her posture. If there was truth to Martin's claims, I needed to know before it exploded in court. I slipped out of bed at dawn and drove to the address listed in Harold's Chicago files. The suburban neighborhood was quiet, with neat lawns and tricycles on driveways. Vivian's house, if she still lived there, was a modest blue bungalow with white trim. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, gathering courage, before finally approaching the door. My knock was answered by a woman in her 60s, slender, with silver-streaked dark hair. Can I help you? She asked. Vivian Reese? My voice barely worked. She nodded, confusion in her eyes. I'm Elaine Foster, Harold's wife. Her face transformed, not with guilt or hostility, but with unexpected compassion. Oh my God.
Please come in.
Inside, Vivian made tea with trembling hands. I always knew this day might come, she said quietly. Martin contacted me last week. He said terrible things about you, claimed you were trying to block Catherine from her inheritance. What inheritance? I asked. What was Harold to you? Vivian took a deep breath. Your husband saved my life, Mrs. Foster. My first husband was violent. Harold helped me escape, set me up with a new identity, this house. The checks weren't romantic, they were protection money. To keep my ex-husband from finding us. I stared at her, stunned. But Martin said. Martin found Harold's records and twisted everything, Vivian said. Catherine isn't Harold's daughter. She's the daughter my abuser nearly killed before we escaped. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Harold hadn't betrayed me. He'd been secretly protecting this family for decades. And Martin had tried to use their trauma against me. I need your help, I said finally. Will you tell your story in court? Script part separator ===. Vivian's hands tightened around her teacup. It's not that simple, she said quietly. If I testify, my ex-husband might finally find us. I reached across the table to cover her hand with mine. Is he still a threat? After all these years? She nodded grimly. He swore he'd kill me if I ever left. The last I heard, he was released from prison 3 years ago. That's why Harold increased the payments, to help us upgrade our security system, change our routines. Understanding washed over me in waves. The mysterious phone calls. The extended business trips. The cash withdrawals that never quite made sense in our monthly budget. Harold hadn't been unfaithful. He'd been heroic. Catherine appeared in the doorway, surprise registering on her face when she saw me. Mrs. Foster? What are you doing here? Getting the truth, I replied. Something my son didn't want me to have. Over the next hour, Catherine and Vivian filled in the gaps of Harold's secret life as their protector. How he'd met Vivian when she was a battered secretary at his company's Chicago office. How he'd helped her disappear with 5-year-old Catherine in the middle of the night. How he'd kept their secret for 2 decades, never once hinting to me about the lives he was saving. When you showed up with Martin yesterday, I began, did he threaten you? Catherine exchanged a look with her mother. He said if we didn't help him, he'd make sure my biological father found us. That he had the address, phone numbers, everything. He said he'd only keep quiet if we helped him get the house. My own son, using terror tactics against vulnerable women. The realization made me physically ill. I have an idea, I said finally. One that doesn't require you to testify in open court. Script part separator ===. Back home, I called Mitchell and explained everything I'd learned. His stunned silence spoke volumes. Harold was a better man than any of us knew, he said finally. And Martin is worse than we feared. Can we use this? I asked. Without endangering Vivian and Catherine? Mitchell's tone turned thoughtful. We might not need them to testify in open court. A sworn affidavit, given to the judge privately, combined with Harold's records. It might be enough. I felt a strange calm settle over me. For the first time since Harold's death, I knew exactly what I needed to do. 3 days later, we gathered in Judge Winter's chambers, Mitchell and me on one side, Martin and his attorney on the other. Martin looked confident, smirking when he caught my eye. The judge reviewed the affidavits from Vivian and Catherine, along with Harold's records. When she finished, she removed her glasses and stared directly at my son. Mr. Foster, these documents suggest you attempted to blackmail vulnerable witnesses and threatened to expose them to physical danger. Martin's smirk vanished. Your Honor, save it, Judge Winters snapped. I am referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Walking out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Martin pushed through them, his face ashen. I watched him go, feeling no triumph, only sadness for what greed had made of my child. The next day, the DA announced fraud charges against Martin. By evening, he'd lost his job. By week's end, his wife had filed for separation. I kept the house. More importantly, I kept Harold's true legacy, not of secrets and lies as Martin had tried to paint it, but of quiet heroism and sacrifice. Today marks 1 year since Harold's passing. I've established a foundation in his name for survivors of domestic violence. Vivian helps run it. Martin pled guilty to lesser charges. I visit him monthly. Some family bonds, even when severely tested, refuse to break completely. And each night, I whisper to Harold's memory, "You were right all along, my love." Our son lost his way, but I've found mine again. And it's paved with the truth you protected for so many years.